This video is brought to you by True Tales of Buried Treasure, the largest collection of old treasure magazines in the West. On our website, you can search for individual treasure stories by region, or buy our original magazines themselves. To pay us a visit, please click on the link in the description. Enjoy. An enormous cave filled with masses of solid gold is said to lie somewhere north of the Grand Canyon. This fissure was reportedly worked during the Spanish occupation of Arizona and was discovered by patrols sent into the forbidding terrain by Coronado. Although the Spanish conquistadors never saw the cave, it was described to them and recorded in the Spanish archives in Mexico City as Sierra Azul, or the Blue Hill. Later, prospecting parties worked the cave until they were driven out by the Utes, who objected to the use of slave labor taken from surrounding villages. Afterward, the riches lay forgotten until a miner stumbled upon the treasure vault 3 centuries later. Jake Johnson, a pocket hunter, earned his living by skimming high-grade surface ore from small gold veins. He was a friendly, easygoing man who spent winters in Arizona near the diggings at Wickenburg or Tucson and escaped to Utah's high country during the hot summers. On one such trip near the rim of the Grand Canyon, Jake fell from a steep cliff into a box canyon, breaking his leg. In that rugged wilderness, a broken leg often meant one of 2 grim outcomes: a slow death by starvation or quicker but more painful death from gangrene. Looking up at his burrows silhouetted against the caprock, Jake watched helplessly as the animals wandered off, carrying his entire outfit with them. With the last reserves of his strength, Jake dragged himself to a small stream. Drifting in and out of consciousness, he managed to survive for several days. His ordeal came to an end when an old Paiute Indian named Rabbit Tail and his wife discovered him. They nursed Jake back to health in their wickiup, using traditional methods. Within a month, Jake was able to hobble around on a crutch. During his recovery, Rabbit Tail caught Jake's burrows and brought them back to a grassy clearing near the shelter. Jake earned Rabbit Tail's trust by listening attentively to his stories, told in broken English, about adventures, hardships, hunts, and battles. One day, Rabbit Tail hinted at an old mine with great trees growing on its dumps and abandoned workings where gold sparkled in the light of a pitchpine torch. Excited by the tale, Jake begged Rabbit Tail for more details, but the old man became silent when he realized Jake's keen interest. Later, while Rabbit Tail was out hunting, Jake saved the old man's wife from a mountain lion drawn to the camp by animal carcasses hanging inside the wickiup. In gratitude, Jake asked Rabbit Tail to show him the mine. After some thought, Rabbit Tail agreed, but only on the condition that they both survive the year ahead. With this promise, Jake left the camp and returned to civilization, traveling northwest past Bunkerville, Nevada, and eventually reaching Las Vegas within a month. From there, Jake wired his cousin, Mike Smith, offering him half of whatever treasure they might find in exchange for grubstake money to last the year. Mike, having had a fortunate prospecting season, agreed to meet Jake in Las Vegas to discuss the venture. The 2 cousins set up camp by a creek flowing between the large springs and the Colorado River, about 20 miles south. Over the next 2 days, Jake recounted his experiences in detail. Convinced, Mike decided to fund the expedition for the following year. They traveled to Los Angeles, where they purchased the best equipment available. In the months leading up to the expedition, Jake and Mike worked together in the placer mining districts around Prescott, Arizona, earning wages by mining the gold gravel along the Hassayampa River. This preparation set the stage for their quest to uncover the legendary treasure. Other miners thought Jake and Mike were touched by the heat, given their erratic mining methods. They would work one area briefly, then abruptly change course without much explanation. However, the cousins had a plan. They were testing out systems and gaining experience as a team. A month before their appointed year was up, Jake and Mike struck camp and headed north. They crossed the Colorado River at a ferry and continued their journey. After days of difficult travel, they arrived at Rabbit Tail's camp. Although surprised by their early arrival, Rabbit Tail and his wife greeted them warmly. After exchanging presents and pleasantries, Rabbit Tail told them to be ready to start before dawn. The 4 woke before first light and set out on their journey. The path was treacherous, often hindered by thick brush and steep rock walls. At times, they had to climb on each other's shoulders to find handholds. Eventually, Rabbit-Tail blindfolded the two prospectors and they continued single file, each holding a length of yucca rope guided by their host. For over an hour, they stumbled over rough terrain, skinning their shins and falling to their knees in the darkness. When the blindfolds were finally removed, they found themselves standing in almost complete darkness within an enormous cavern. At Rabbit-Tail's word, a light was struck, revealing the cavern's vast, barren walls, which gave no immediate hint of mineral wealth. However, at their feet were masses of rock filled with nuggets and wire gold. The source of this gold was not immediately apparent. Elated yet puzzled, Jake and Mike turned to Rabbit-Tail, who motioned them toward a small opening they hadn't noticed. Following his lead, they crawled on hands and knees through a narrow passage for about 100 feet. They emerged onto a shale shelf, bordering a 5-foot-wide chasm that seemed bottomless. Rabbit-Tail leaped across with ease, and though hesitant, the cousins followed. The trio found themselves on a narrow ledge and crept carefully along its tortuous path, struggling to maintain their balance. Eventually, they reached the entrance to a side passage. This shaft appeared man-made and sloped upward at a 20-degree incline. After climbing nearly 100 yards, they emerged into a massive chamber. The sight within this chamber left Jake and Mike speechless. The walls, floor, and ceiling glittered with gold under the torchlight. Before them was a large body of honeycombed quartz, studded with pure gold nuggets the size of walnuts, bound together by intricate patterns of wire gold. The ceiling featured a network of wire gold that resembled woven designs, while the sides held hard white quartz laced with gold, similar to the kind used in fine jewelry. On the floor, piles of gold ore were neatly arranged. Among the piles lay antique mining tools, and in one dimly lit corner, the skeletal remains of a miner could be seen. Jake and Mike could hardly believe their eyes. After a few moments, Rabbit-Tail broke the silence. "Come, we go now," he said firmly. Despite their pleas to explore further, Rabbit-Tail refused. Reluctantly, the cousins obeyed, filling their pockets and rucksacks with the richest samples they could find. Retracing their steps proved even more challenging than their initial journey. Eventually, they made their way back to the entrance cavern where their adventure had begun. The Indian replaced their bandages and they set out on the return journey. It was long after dark when they finally reached their campsite. Exhausted and worn out, they devoured the food left over from the morning's breakfast before collapsing into their bedrolls. They slept so deeply that it was well past daylight when they awoke, only to discover that Rabbit-Tail and his squaw had vanished. For the next 2 days, Jake and Mike crushed and washed the ore they had carried from the cavern. Though they had collected less than 100 pounds of rock, they recovered over $4,000 worth of bullion, valued at the pre-1935 price of $20 per ounce. With plenty of food and supplies, the pair decided to retrace their trail, confident it would be easy to follow. However, several weeks of searching yielded nothing. Time and again, they climbed to the point where Rabbit-Tail had blindfolded them, but beyond that the path remained a mystery. Each attempt ended in either a blind canyon or an impassable precipice. As their supplies dwindled, they loaded their burros and headed to St. George to restock. After replenishing their provisions, they returned to the search, continuing until winter set in. Eventually, they abandoned the effort temporarily and traveled to Salt Lake City to sell their bullion at the smelter. News of their small but incredibly rich haul of nuggets and gold dust spread quickly, and for several days, Salt Lake newspapers were filled with accounts of the remarkable discovery. The following spring and summer, Jake and Mike resumed their search but met with the same frustrating results. At last, they gave up and returned to Salt Lake City, where they shared their story with the Mining Review, which published the tale. In their later years, the cousins bought adjoining farms in the Salt Lake Valley. Nothing delighted them more than recounting their adventure to anyone willing to listen to the story of the wealth they had found and lost, under the guidance of a Paiute named Rabbit-Tail. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to read the original article or purchase the magazine from which it was taken, please check out our website, truetalesofburiedtreasure.com.